Welcome to the Milford School Committee meeting of January 3rd. This meeting is being recorded and the media is present. If there's any person who'd like to make a recording of this meeting, please just contact any member of the committee or someone in the superintendent's office. The first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes for approval this evening. It was the regular meeting of December 20th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? So take a motion from Dawn, second from Mike. All in favor of approving the minutes from December 20th? Opposed? Unanimous in favor, the motion carries. The next item on our agenda are announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Does any member have an announcement?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to, first of all, to the committee, Happy New Year, welcome back. The first announcement this evening, just to acknowledge the passing of one of our longtime educators, Cynthia Chakey, as you know, recently passed away, and just wanted to make a public announcement to thank her and, for her service to the community, and our condolences to the family on behalf of the Milford School Committee, on behalf of the Central Administration and the Milford Public Schools.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Does any other member have announcements, correspondence, or distributions?
I just have one other correspondence I'd like to share with the committee tonight. This is from the Milford Lions Club. It's short, so I'll just read it verbatim. Dear Mr. Tremblay, on behalf of the Milford Lions Club, I wanted to thank the Milford Public Schools for all that you do to help our club. In particular, the recent pancake breakfast with Santa in the beginning of December was a huge success. All the money we raise goes to local charities, which help others in need. Each year, we also contribute 3 $1,000 scholarships to deserving Milford High School graduates furthering their education. We could not do this important work without your unwavering support. I would like to recognize Nadine Pomeroy, Shelley Turnbow, and Matthew Baudet, all of whom are in our music department, as you may know, for helping make the event very festive with their group's delightful performances. As usual, Carla Tuttle and her staff were also outstanding. And I wanted to say thank you to Tony Cirillo, building custodian, for coming in to work on a Sunday during a very busy time of the year. This is one of our biggest fundraisers, and as I mentioned earlier, it is the result of many people coming together for a common goal. Many thanks again to all in the school system who had a hand in this. I'd also like to wish you all a very happy holidays and all the best in the coming new year. Sincerely yours, Paul Rao, committee co-chair. And I wanted to just share that with the committee tonight. It's nice to have positive correspondence in the school department.
It's always wonderful to hear news like that when we're thanks from the community, so that's terrific.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is invitation to speak. Did anybody come tonight to address the committee? Seeing no one, I will now move on to our next item agenda, which is our curriculum committee update. And I'm excited to have this update. I think that for those of you who have watched the meetings know that we did a major revamp on our curriculum leadership over the course of the past year. And the superintendent has taken a leadership role in restructuring a lot of our curriculum leadership. And so this opportunity really is sort of a midterm progress on what's happening. Last year, the superintendent collected a lot of information, and this year he's been putting it into action. And so, without any further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Tremblay.
Sure. Well, this is a bit foreshadowing. As you recall, we set some goals in the beginning of the school year collectively, one of those being obviously around curriculum. So we're coming upon the point in the year where it's a mid-cycle progress report based on the new tool that we're using. So there'll be a follow-up meeting in the next meeting for the school committee. I'll give this is the actual mid-cycle progress report. I'll give you all the goals and show you where the progress is being made. And part of that collection, as the educators who are here and who I'll call to the table in just a moment can attest, there's a fair amount of collection of evidence that goes along with this. So as part of this evidence, and the highlight tonight is around the curriculum committee. So I just wanted to read this goal because it really is tonight's discussion, a brief discussion just about an update of what's happening with curriculum in the school district, is directly linked to the goals that were set by the committee and me collectively. So the goal was to establish and lead the Milford Public Schools Curriculum Committee. We work with Teachers 21, a nonprofit professional development consultant organization who will assist me in developing a strong framework for curriculum coordination, instruction, assessment, review. And I will meet monthly with the curriculum committee. That was the goal that I set forward, very much on target. Charged with all matters of pre-K-12 curriculum, program coordination, and an evaluation of all aspects of curriculum instruction and assessment, I will empower curriculum team leaders, CTLs, to fulfill the responsibilities of their positions. As you know, in the past, curriculum team leaders have had this sort of lieutenant level role. We've had curriculum supervisors. In my view of that, the curriculum team leaders weren't used to their full capacity. And I think that was a misstep on our part, one that we corrected. And I think that we've gained a lot from that, and I'll ask the two that are able to join us tonight to comment on that. And the goal here being that I will successfully lead the Milford Schools Curriculum Committee and provide a strong rationale for moving forward with an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, which is really going to be part of our budget discussions to see if that's something the committee wants to go forward with. But the purpose of tonight is just to give an update on what's been happening with regard to curriculum since the school year began. And Jessica Lamarbe is here, represents math, and Alyssa Holland, if you wouldn't mind coming to the table and putting you on the spot. And I'll just give a couple of highlights as to what we've done, and then I'd like to have, we didn't rehearse this ahead of time, so I don't know what may come out of this. But I did ask that to be honest dialogue, because there's always room for improvement, and I think it's been a healthy start. What I will share with the committee, this is the sort of thing that I would, and really it's for the committee to give me some feedback on too, is this is, in my view, the sort of evidence the committee would want to see from me to say, all right, Bob, you said you're going to do this. Are you really delivering on this? Well, there's a couple ways to measure that. If you didn't sit in on one of the meetings, you could at least see the agenda, what we've been doing. I can, the minutes of the meetings, whatever. But tonight we have the opportunity to have a couple of educators share their perspective, who are obviously, seasoned in their jobs in the district and have been around to see how this curriculum has evolved over the last few years, with a lot of changes in front of us right now with the evaluation tool, Common Core changes, and so forth. So I didn't make copies for everybody just to save paper. I have just a few of these agendas, and I'll just circulate them and pass them around as we're talking, and you can get an idea. This is the agenda from the first meeting, as I said in the goals, that I'll be meeting monthly. Here's the September agenda, October, and so forth. There's a meeting coming up on January 8th. That agenda is already drafted, and it's been issued out today, in fact, to the teachers, and that agenda is here for you to look at as well. So I'll just circulate these to the committee to look at. And just as a quick highlight, we come together, and again, I apologize if it's redundant, but it's important to just go back in time to the deal that was made back last June when we knew we were going to go forward. I was going to go forward with reducing the curriculum supervisor positions. I called together all the curriculum team leaders and said, here's the bill of goods. Here's what you signed up for, and you have all summer to think about it. This is not for you, but here's the expectation. And there was some considerable dialogue at the meeting in June, and lo and behold, everybody came back and went to work in September. There was nobody that decided to opt out. So the truth in lending was made clear back last June, and this group has done some tremendous work. And really, I've seen even the kind of dialogue. Marilyn Gilman, for example, I'll use her name. I invited Marilyn. She couldn't be here tonight. Marilyn gave out an email to her department today, and it was terrific. It was just great leadership from within the department, and it was just what I had envisioned these roles being. So, ladies, maybe I just ask you to comment on maybe what your takeaways have been with this structure, understanding that it may be something we continue to go forward with. Right now, it's the stopgap of having, in the absence of nothing, having what I think is a good leadership model that really enlists a lot of people. This group is not a small group. It's about 30 strong, because it includes the principals and directors as well. So there's no misunderstanding or misrelaying of information. It's all firsthand, and it happens in the same room at the same time. So Jessica or Alyssa, if you maybe share a couple of comments about your reactions to how the structure's been and where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are.
I definitely think that it was tough getting going, because we weren't really sure what our task was going to be. We had to sort of figure that out. I think we've been doing a lot of really good work lately. It's actually interesting having that many people in a room. You would think that it would be difficult to talk about things and get a lot out there, but it really hasn't been. So the format, I think, has been really working. It's been a lot of work. It's a little bit tough being out of the class once a month, so that's been a little bit of a challenge. But in science, we've, for example, since September, have mapped the 3 through 5 curriculum, which we were lacking before. And what that means is our state curriculum is 3 years, and they don't tell us when we have to cover each standard. So we have to figure that out as a district, and we were just sort of not having the communication between the grade levels to make that happen. And I sat down with the Woodland CTL, Shannon Roach, and this is what 3rd is going to do, this is what 4th is going to do, this is what 5th is going to do. The principals were on board, Mr. Tremblay was on board. We said, here you go. and the teachers now know exactly, this is what I'm teaching, this is what I'm responsible for. And then fourth grade can say, I know what the kids are coming in with. Fifth grade can say, I know what the kids are coming in with. And so that's been really helpful. So we got that done, and we're working on that with the high school now, from middle school to high school. So a lot of really good work that was sort of lacking for us in science. We've gotten textbooks are coming in or in the works for fifth grade and seventh grade, which has been a whole. So it's just really been kind of identifying problems and banging out solutions as fast as possible. So I think it's been really helpful. I think that we need a little bit more support in the way of someone to help coordinate, especially for Bob. It's been a lot of work for everybody. And some of those bigger picture things I think would be helpful to have someone sort of in that leadership role. But in general, I think it's been pretty good.
Jessica, before I have you comment, thanks, Alyssa, for that. I'm sure the committee has comments and questions too. The structure of it, and I'm glad you addressed that as well. The first meeting, and the point is very well taken, because it was figuring out what are we going to do. We know we have the right people on the bus. You use the good to great analogy, but we know we had everybody in the room that we needed in the room. The question was, what do we want to find out with these people, with the resources that we have? And it seemed to me the first thing to find out was what's not working, and really just take stock of, in the operation, go out, talk to your colleagues, whether it's inventorying books, talking to staff, where is it broken? And then come back and report out. So you'll see in the agenda, there's a reporting out mechanism. Very short, 3 minutes, it's got to be succinct. They have to working lunch. They have to decide who the spokesperson will be. It's on a stopwatch. I mean, it's regimented. They come back and they report out what they found. And then the next meeting, we can then boil down to something more specific around curriculum, around data pieces of that. Maybe it's around personnel, or it's just quick fixes. And the idea behind that was we could get some big wins with teachers who feel like they've been making the same complaints or the same requests year after year after year, that seem to have fallen on deaf ears. And it may not be intentional. Maybe the budget wasn't right, or that maybe the right person was speaking to the wrong person who didn't have the spending authority, or whatever it might have been. We've corrected that by getting all the right people in the room at the same time. And I think that we've gained some momentum and some traction and some trust with teachers who might have up until now, and not to put words in your mouth, but that was the sense that I was getting, where people are now saying, well, maybe there is something to this, and maybe I am being heard. And I think that's a really important part to this, to what we've discovered in this process. So I don't know if you want to have Jessica report and then open it up to the committee for some comments and questions, or?
Do any members have questions now, or should we just ask questions as we go along?
Can,
Of course,
yeah.
I agree with Alyssa. It's hard being out of the classroom once a month, but meeting with my counterparts at Brookside Memorial and at Stacy in the high school has been just a wealth of information for all of us. We've all gained from that. The elementary part of it knows that we have a ton of work to do. It never seems like we get everything done that we want to do on any day that we're there. We haven't met for a couple of years because of NEASC, and there's a lot of things that we want to mesh together. Third and fourth grade are in pretty good shape, and we want to catch the K1, 2 up to that point. Other than that, it's been a really good experience for us. I think that we've learned a lot from each other. It's good for me to connect with Stacy. We have a good relationship now, and we email all the time, and when I have questions, I know that I can email them quickly and they get right back to me because we've got a good relationship. So that's been really good. It's just, we never seem to have enough time to finish everything, and it is hard to be out of the classroom.
So part of the work is uncovering inconsistencies.
Yes.
Who has the right books, where are we short, where the material's dated. But then layer on top of that the Common Core, the changes in the state frameworks, the foreshadowing of changes coming down the road with MCAS, now to this park assessment. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts that these folks have the expertise to better understand, and have been a resource to me. The one thing that came loud and clear was up until now, because the agenda has been so heavy and so top-down directed, there's not been enough time, it seems, is what I've heard, was for teachers and CTLs to go back and really do now the grunt work. They're at a point where we see what's broken, we understand what we need to do to fix it. Now let us get to work and do that, whether it's curriculum mapping so that we're all on the same page, or it's pacing, or it's alignment work, or it's digging deeper into some of the data work, which is, because the data analysis up until recently, I've always sort of led that way as doing something separate, almost as though we're autonomous from what's happening in the classroom. Not that they're not related, but it was presented that way. The benefit now of what we've been doing is looking at data. When Alyssa and I had sat in on their group for a bit when they were meeting with the CTL team, it's really important to understand that up until just recently, this year, it was very difficult to find common time for elementary and high school and middle level all to come together at the same time. And that conversation needs to happen. If we find that there's gaps along the way, we won't figure that out until we have the dialogue. But looking at some of the data, and I mentioned this to the committee in a prior meeting, not only looking at the data as to how Milford is doing compared to against the state, because even if we're outperforming the state, as you saw that we are in almost every area, Milford is achieving above the state average. But that is not good enough for what we believe, and we know we can do better than that and find ourselves to some real comparison communities. And we begin to do that work in tandem with. So if it's looking at curriculum, and if curriculum is not aligned in some way, we find a higher performing district on the same kinds of MCAS questions. And now Alyssa and her team called, for example, the surrounding communities. What is your science program? I mean, it almost seems so obvious. Why didn't we figure this out a long time ago? But we're making our way to really making those strides. So I don't want to kick ourselves too hard in the rear end. At the same time, to say we are making that great progress this year. We're linking the data with what we're finding in terms of curriculum gaps. So I just want to commend you both and all your colleagues for taking it on, because I understand it's another day out of your class, you know, and it seems all the good teachers don't want to leave their kids and leave. But I hope you understand and appreciate that you are doing the work for the big picture, and those kids in the end are going to benefit by the work that you're doing. So I want to publicly thank you both and all your colleagues who are doing that. So I hope that gives you some sense of what's happening in curriculum, and certainly we can answer questions and talk more about the topic.
Any members have questions?
Thank you for coming here. Bob said, you know, good teachers don't want to leave their classroom, but it takes good teachers to solve this problem that we have. But anyway, when you bring up the teachers too, I mean, it's good that you're getting them involved, because they are the ones on the front line, and these teachers could tell you what's working for them and what's not working for them. You know, we always used to say here, you know, it's you know, when we talk about the MCAS, it's not just the curriculum, it's the overall, it's the whole student. So a teacher could find out, you know, what would be working for one student, what wouldn't be working for another one. Again, it's just not what goes on in these four walls or what goes on outside of these four walls, which is very important, probably more important than what goes on within these four walls here. But anyway, that's one thing I'd like to congratulate everybody on, comment on, and compliment on, really, that you do need the teachers involved as well. I'm trying to think of some of the other notes I made here, too, in the data that you brought up, Bob. That's so important, I think, because we always kept talking when you and I used to talk, and with the rest of the committee, you know, how you can get what's working. That could be the whole answer, what's working and what's not working, what's lacking, and what's not lacking. You can tell by what questions aren't being answered properly in the MCAS tests, and more or less incorporate that into the curriculum, which we always try to do, okay? Because, you know, I always was taught repetition is the best teacher. You know, I mean, when you keep going over it every day, you know, eventually you're going to get it, no matter if you're a top student or if you're a mediocre student. Eventually it's going to catch on. But again, I mean, that's just my points with the curriculum, and I'm glad you're going in that direction, and I want to comment and compliment the both of you and your committee as well. Thank you.
I'm actually really excited because I think a lot of great things are going to come out of a curriculum committee. I think it's something we've needed for a long time. And I think one of the things that I've always said on Bob's evaluation and just in general is that we have so many schools that there needs to be a better coordination across the schools, because, you know, when MCAS started, it was always Poor Woodland, but there was no communication, there was no string that attached K all the way through, and I think this is a really important part of it. My concern now is, are we just putting out fires, or do we have a map? Like, so now we've gone through September, so 4 meetings, you're on maybe your 5th meeting. Now do we have a map for it? I mean, you can't tackle the whole curriculum issue that we're dealing with now or trying to make better. So do you feel like now, okay, we've done it this long, we have a map, we're going to do this first. We're going to do, I mean, you have to take the baby steps, because otherwise, I think what's happened with us, with a lot of the data we get, you just get all this data and you're reactive rather than proactive. And so I just hope that the committee evolves to be much more proactive rather than reactive, like books and stuff. This is all reactive fires, you know.
It was really to get a sort of a baseline inventory, an inventory of where it's broken, and finding that out by the direct conversations with staff. And so all that inventory work is really just preliminary. Now we're getting to sort of, exactly right. So now we know where it's broken, where it's been malaligned, and now we're able to synchronize it and find out what do we need to do to move forward. So from this point forward, now it's all very much proactive work. It's still data-driven, but up until now, it's been trying to sort of make sense of what happened over time and where did we get off the rails, if we did.
Yeah.
And not every case did we.
Because there's been so many great ideas curriculum-wise presented before us. I mean, terrific ideas, but if they're not working together, they just kind of like these little islands unto themselves.
right.
And so that's why this kind of committee is so important, and people that are dedicated educators are so important. I've always been critical of some of the professional development. This doesn't bother me at all. I think this is absolutely what our mission should be. And so having a day out is hard for the good teachers or any teacher to be out of your classroom once a month like that is difficult. But boy, the payoff is going to be great if it works the way we think it does. My other question is, do you find your other peers, your other teachers, seeing you as your contact person, the go-to person now that your role has been better defined maybe in the first 4 months? And because I think we really need that person in K through 2 or K through 4 so that they know, hey, I have this contact in math, I have this contact in science, to use them as a leadership role and guidance rather than, I think it was kind of always a floating position, not really given authority. Do you have some kind of curriculum authority, I guess?
I think that was the biggest problem for me the last few years, is it was, the curriculum supervisors were sort of on the same level as the principals, and then there were the CTLs, and so who does it fall under? And we were constantly having that battle, I think.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, just
Right.
sort of a whose responsibility
The
is
fuzzy
this?
lines.
And I think, I think the confidence in us, I think with the teachers, just in the leadership in general has been great. And even to the point where, like, we needed books, but we know that our science curriculum is gonna be changing soon. And, I was able to have some really great conversations with the teachers about, well, what do you really need? And some of the teachers were just happy to have a classroom set to start of maybe, smaller books rather than a $25,000 new textbook series that maybe won't be effective in a couple of years. And so we were able to sort of have those conversations and really decide what is it that we need. And teachers were really mindful of the budget and exactly what they need in class. And I just think it was great that they're on board with helping with all of those things too. It's not just this like negative feeling of nobody's listening to me.
Right.
So, I've felt empowered to kind of handle some of those situations, and I think that they've, come to me with more with issues.
So there's a real buy-in from the staff
Yeah.
as to what a CTL's role is now, or what Bob envisions your CTL
I think
role
they just
to
like
be.
seeing us stopping in and saying,
Yeah.
hey, what do you need? Is there something I can do for you? And it's not just necessarily budget or something like that. It could
Right.
be, anything. But, I need more communication with the grade below me because I need, to
That's
figure
great.
this out. I noticed a problem.
That's
So,
I found that a lot of the teachers, we put out fires, I think, at first. But now, a lot of the teachers come to me more readily with curriculum questions. What do they do in second grade? Can you get me some second grade material? I've got students that, really need that material before they do the third grade material. Or, can you get me material for this? I'm very confident calling the fifth grade CTL and saying, I need some material for some upper level kids that really
That's
need
great.
some enrichment material. I think that's been a real plus to this whole curriculum committee. Right now, we have, especially on the math committee, we have so many goals that we know have to be met. We want to work on our maps. We want to make our maps smoother and better and fill in some places. We know the state's coming down with a new map for us, so we're filling in when we need to, but we're holding off on some other things. As far as the curriculum goes, I think the everyday math is working really well for everybody. And people are asking a lot of good questions about the new core curriculum, which I think has been really helpful.
Great. And one more question. Do you meet outside of that one day? Do you have that kind of opportunity, or is it kind of impromptu, more of individual one-on-one, or teachers here and there? Or really that one day is when you get most of your CTL
We get-
networking and work done?
We get most of our CTL work done on that day,
Mhm.
but I get emails constantly from the other CTLs, asking questions, getting materials. We've switched a lot of materials back and forth, which has been really great for everybody this year.
Great.
And so we've shared a lot more than we ever have before.
Yeah, I think that's what's great about it is like as you're, working on these things like the curriculum mapping and all of that, once you get the flow down and you know what the format is gonna be, then a lot of it you can do via email here and there, little pieces, and so it's sort of an ongoing thing, all the time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So, again, I'll continue on with the, thank you so much for all the work you guys are doing. Certainly 30 people on a committee is no small feat. Thank you both for coming this evening. A couple of questions that I have for you. So a couple things that you mentioned was, it really sounded a lot like there was a lot of missing communication between the schools, and it sounds like that's really improved quite a bit as a result of that.
It has.
Which is great. It's gonna be critical that that continues, and hopefully that's part of a longer going plan that, you mentioned also some missing kind of the support and leadership from a coordination perspective. I'd hope that you guys, the two of you kind of speak to that a little bit more as far as some specifics of kind of what's missing. You talk about some of the missing, coordination and leadership support.
The biggest thing, I think, the biggest breakdown in communication between the schools, a lot of it comes from the fact that, we're just on different time schedules, so there's different contractual time, and, especially for like the middle school to get together with anybody in the elementary, the times don't work out to start. And then the different schools have been in NEASC at different times, and that takes up a tremendous amount of time. So that was sort of cutting into meeting time. And so I think because of all of these things, there was just a tremendous breakdown in communication because there wasn't that FaceTime. And you just really need to get together in a room and say, okay, we need to do this and do it. And if you can't get together like that, there's only so much you can do via email.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. And I guess the leadership, like I said, I think there was just sort of a little bit of confusion as to whose jurisdiction certain things fell under. And it's a really big task for one person to take on the entire coordination of different subjects where, like math, for example, has a bigger push. The state has a bigger push on it. We're under more pressure for it. And so science sort of fell by the wayside, I felt. So because of that. And I understand the reasoning behind it, but at the same time, it's frustrating when you also want to do well and have a good curriculum. And it's important to have that. So MCAS is important, but it's not the only thing that we are striving to do here. So, and also even with MCAS analysis, I think there were holes in what we were doing. I don't think it was effective. I think it's very important to look at the questions and to see what they're asking and to see how we did on each question, but also they may never ask that question again. It could have been an issue with a word that they used that the students didn't understand. It's not necessarily a conceptual issue. So looking at data pieces differently and sort of trying to work that out, I think is going to be really helpful. So those were some of the holes, I think, for me in what's been happening the last few years that I think we're sort of closing those gaps.
And for math, I think one of the problems was, well, it wasn't a problem, I guess. Dr. Shea kept us all in line because she looked at the three schools all the time, and we never had to really communicate with one another because she was our communication tool. Now that she's gone, we've been forced to talk to one another and fill in a lot of those gaps. And we've gained a lot of knowledge from that. We've really moved ahead on a lot of our curriculum planning and knowing what the other schools have for materials and what we have, and we've traded a lot of materials, and that's worked out really well for us in math.
Okay. If I may, two follow-ups, so thank you both for that. Follow-up question on that would be, so obviously, part of the idea behind this committee is also kind of to understand what an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, how they would fit into that. How would that, adding that position, do you think that would help with continuing with the coordination of these efforts that you guys have done so far? Because it sounds like we've removed some layers, and it's made a lot easier, and it's made things a lot better. We're now talking about adding in a layer, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but we're talking about adding in a layer now, and now we're adding another person to the party. Is that kind of, how do you see that kind of fitting in and helping with the work where you guys are headed?
Sometimes we need the big picture
Okay.
for someone to look over, especially for elementary, for the 3 elementary schools, and to look at the big picture. Sometimes it's hard for me as a 3rd and 4th grade teacher to understand exactly what's going on in K1 and 2. And sometimes that person that can look over all of us and give me some insight really helps. Talking to the other CTLs helps, of course, but they don't see my point of view. And when we have the MCAS and they don't, they're obviously preparing their students for the MCAS, but it's a little bit different for us. So sometimes that other set of eyes was helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are some, as great as this has been, it's a lot of work. And there are certain things like, you know, coordination of templates, like we've had a lot of discussion recently about curriculum documents, and do we all use the same template, and what should the template look like, and things like that, and how do we get that out to everybody, and how do we make sure everybody's using them. Grant writing, finding resources for programs that are, just take a lot of time for research, that when you're teaching a full course load and you have 1 day a month, makes it very difficult to spend time delving into those areas, where I think having someone at the top to coordinate us can really help with those needs.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for coming in and for your contributions to the committee. You know, my thoughts, you know, are a little bit dovetail off of what Scott was just saying. You know, weighing the budgetary expense of bringing in an assistant superintendent of curriculum, you know, versus a day out of the classroom. You know, I understand the challenges that come with that, but I would ask the question, would a second day be worth it? Because I see a tremendous amount of value in that face-to-face discussion that 30 of you are getting, and that's a very instrumental team of people meeting. You know, to provide that continuity and that progression from grade to grade. Did we have it? I guess I want to ask the question, filling in for all of these teachers, how was that challenge?
Are we getting substitutes?
Yeah.
Well,
That was something too that I had expressed, as well as Rob and actually Christine and Mike. Many of us had said, if we're taking these guys out of the classroom once a month, every single month,
right.
that's a lot of teaching time lost, and that the pressure was to be on the principals to put people in those classrooms who can actually teach what you would have taught had you been there. And so I guess the question, and I definitely want to hear what you have to say, but I also want to hear what our teachers have to say. I mean, has that been successful? And I didn't mean to jump in, but
That's where I'm going, you know. You knowing when it would be, you'd have time to prepare your plan, and were you finding that, you know, the folks coming in were taking care of that for you, I guess?
I know in my building, I'm the only CTL in my building, so I'm kind of lucky in that I put in all the days ahead of time, and I just get the building sub, who's Dan Cody, who's awesome. He's not a science guy, but he's been pretty effective at carrying out pretty much anything that I've asked him to do, and touching base with me ahead of time to say, is there anything that, you know, you want to go over with me? But I have that advantage where I'm the only one, so I get him no matter what. I think that some of the other teachers, I've heard that some of the other CTLs have expressed that, you know, it's going into the ASOP system and they're randomly getting somebody that they may not know. And I know one guy was just like, you know what, the kids had to do this lesson, I can't put it off anymore, so I left all the materials and they're just gonna, the sub is gonna have to do it. But at the same time, how effective is it? It depends on the person in the room. So that has been a bit of a challenge, I think. You know, and I think everybody's getting really good at sort of planning for that and knowing that it's coming up and really trying to kind of work it out so that the kids have something really meaningful to do. But it's hard not to you know, it's good to have, I guess, support from the principals to help get people in there who could teach. I've had several subs in the past that when we didn't have the ASOP system, that we could just call and say, hey, science teacher out, come in, and they just do the lesson. I could say we're doing radioactive decay, and they would just do it. So I don't have that luxury right now. So I think there's some kinks that maybe could be worked out with that. I definitely think that we still, whether we have the assistant superintendent of curriculum or not, I think we need this day out of the classroom every month. That should continue. Despite all the challenges, I think we're doing really great work. And my students know, look, this is gonna happen once a month. And, you know, I explain to them, this is 2 weeks out of the year, essentially, that we're gonna miss together. But, you know, so you have to be on board with doing the work too. And they are. They're really good with that. So, they understand that the day can't be lost. You always have challenges with that, but I think, you know, I think it could be tweaked a little bit, but.
And I agree. Most of the time, I can get the sub that I want. But every once in a while, there's an emergency at the building, and we have 3 people out in my building. And, I mean, my children told me last time that they had a great time. The teacher let them do whatever they wanted. And it's, it's a little difficult at Woodland because I'm in an open classroom, too. So, you know, I think that sometimes is a challenge. You know, no matter what lesson plans I leave, and I know who I'm having, but if there's an emergency and someone needs to substitute for the substitute, sometimes that is a real challenge.
But, yeah, that's great information. Again, it sounds like you're on the right track, so thank you.
Again, I'd like to say thank you for coming in this evening. I'd like to say to the superintendent, it's amazing tonight, communication, communication, communication. You know, the same thing we get out of our security and safety meetings. You get the right people in the room, and you let everybody talk. It's amazing what comes out of it, and I commend you for that. I really, really do, because you're the ones that are in the battlefield, you know, every day, you know, doing the job. My question, Alyssa, if you could just, and maybe you did answer it, but I heard you use the terminology big picture. Are you describing moving forward now once you've gathered all your information, or are you talking just a general overview?
Well, there's a lot of issues, like, for example, last year, sort of sponsored by the MIMSI program that we were involved in, we had some really great talks in our vertical alignment meetings about how there were gaps in the students' knowledge of math in science coming through to the high school, and the high school teachers, science teachers, were having a really difficult time with that because the students just weren't having the skills. And in the middle school, we were just like, you know, it's hard to squeeze it into our curriculum. They're not part of the learning standards, but it's important. But we're having trouble because they're not coming in with the skills to us. Right. And, you know, and it's not necessarily just a weakness in math, it's the application to science. And so one of the things that, you know, we said was, well, we can't just keep saying that, well, we don't have time and it's not our responsibility, so we just have to figure it out. And that's one of the things that we did, is said, okay, the high school teachers told us these are the skills that they need. And so I sat down, part of what I've been doing with these days is looking at those skills and trying to break it down and then taking it back to my department in the middle school and saying, okay, these are the skills that they need to leave 8th grade with. What can they do in 6th grade? What can they do in 7th grade? What can they do in 8th grade? And trying to build a progression so that in 8th grade, there's not the pressure to hurry up and try to teach them all this stuff. They're coming in. But all of that requires a lot of coordination and sort of a vision of where they need to end, and then to try to work it down, and eventually that should go into the elementary school as well. So I think that's what I mean more about big pictures, identifying those larger problems, especially with vertical alignment, or not even really problems, but just needs that we need to fill, and having somebody's, you know, because there are times where we may have to say, you mentioned professional development and issues with that, we may have to say, you know what, we need to get teachers out of the classroom for a day to really sit down and tackle this issue. And by having the ability to look at those bigger pictures, I think we can assess those needs better, as opposed to everybody just saying, I need more time, I need more time. We can really see where the time is needed. So I think that's more what I meant, if that makes sense.
I guess if I could add, and I know it's very, very difficult to be out of your classroom for one day, but I'd ask you to keep going, because I think this is a plan for success. I truly do, and I think we're going in the right direction. I commend everybody. I really do.
Also, just one last question, please. With all the work you're doing, how are you going to measure the success or not success of the committee? Do you have that in plan yet? What specific guidelines you're going to be using to see if what you're doing is actually working?
Part of it is we see a lot of holes that were left when we worked on NEASC because we had the curriculum committees before. There's a lot of things that we need to make seamless pre-K to 4 and then 5 to 8 and on to the high school. Right now, we have a lot of holes in pre-K to 8, and that's what we're working on. I think if we can get that set, I think that we'll be able to fill in other holes along the way, and then that will help to us to help the kids to be more successful on their MCAS, and that would be a good measure.
Good.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to work that out as to how we're gonna measure that, but I think it will be measurable. It's just a matter of, like you said, filling in those holes
Filling in
and
the
then
holes and
seeing
getting-
what the
seeing it all.
results are
Right.
from there.
Wow,
Very
great job.
good, thank you.
Great job.
I think that, as a committee, we all knew, sitting here a year ago in this room, that there wasn't a vision of how it's going to work for pre-K through 8. We knew that there were 5th grade teachers that didn't know what the 7th grade was doing, and 8th grade teachers that didn't know what the 6th grade teachers were doing. And it's so gratifying to hear now that we have a vision of a pre-K through 8 curriculum, and that we have a pathway laid out for students that they begin in pre-K and they work through on their way to high school before they come to the college prep level courses that they take when they get here. And it's something that we've been lacking, and it's something that I was hopeful that this curriculum leadership, this restructured curriculum leadership could get us to, because I think that that vision and that pathway is the most important part. And it becomes much easier for us to move students along that pathway when the teachers know what it is. And it's so very important that this is getting done. And I know that there have been some bumps in the road, and I've spoken to Bob about those, and those will happen. But I know the work that you're all doing on this, and to echo Paul, I'm so appreciative of everything that you've really been doing, because I do know how hard everyone is working. I didn't mean to steal your thunder a little bit. Bob,
No, thanks, and again, I would only echo the same thing. I came into this with this idea, full transparency, that I, at the time, was a deficit of mine would be curriculum leadership. And to hit that head on and take on the challenge myself, and Scott and Rob, to your points as well, I can assure you that having an assistant working with me who's got expertise in this area will free me up to tend to other matters in the district as well. But this is a huge area for me to focus on, and where I think that Milford schools can take off, and I see that it is already happening that way. And so I rely on teachers with the expertise that they have to inform me, and I hope that I've been a resource to you to at least bring the group together, provide you whatever resources we can. I understand that the analogy I like to use, as I was thinking about as I was listening to you speak, is almost like if you've ever been behind a boat on a set of water skis or on a board or a tube, or just somehow being dragged behind a boat, and there's that point where you go over the wake and now you're going along to the side of the boat. You know what happens next, right? You go back over the wake and you get whipped back to the other side. And I feel like we're almost on par. So the state is this motorboat, and the state is moving, and we don't know what turn it's going to take next. But Milford is really right on par with it, whether it's analysis of data or if it's curriculum mapping. We're actually waiting for the state to release a model map. We have maps, but before we spend, to Jessica's point, a lot of time using our maps and then have to redo them all, we're waiting for so we're constantly knocking on the state's door saying, okay, what's next? What's next? We're ready for you. So we're pushing the state. But I'm afraid of the quick turn, and then we get whipped to the other side. So I think that this group, keeping it in perspective, and I think that one of the measures for us that we use, Paul, we call it the grid. Affectionately, we refer to it as the grid. And from the first meeting and continuing on, is that whether it's a technology gap or somebody needs a whiteboard, the math department at the high school, using whiteboards. And, well, it turns out by bringing everybody in the same room, like to your point about communication, well, hey, wait, we have a whiteboard we don't use here. Next thing I know, I tell Rob, and Rob moves the whiteboard. It's very simple solutions but unless you had everybody in the room at the same time, it would take, if you had one person having to figure that out, find the right people, it could take months. When we can solve it in a day. We've been able to knock, and what we ended up doing is have so many issues that were technology or that were just textbook or facilities, and then to take those and kind of grid them all. And then what I ended up doing was taking that and putting it into a spreadsheet so I could sit with Len Beaudry on technology and say, here's your things to do list. This is driven by the teachers, by the CTLs, by the principals. Everybody has the same needs inventory, and now Len has it in front of him. This is his checklist. This is his punch list. Rob Quinn, the same thing. You need this fixed here, this fixed here. There's a lab, I don't know if you're probably aware, but there's a vent, the vent hood in the chemistry lab. For whatever reason, Rob Quinn was never told that it wasn't working. Corrected it, it's fixed. These are simple wins that just by bringing the right people together at the right time. So that's another measure, and for me, is having if you have a grid that happens to be 50 columns by 50 columns of needs, and now that thing is gone, and basically the grid is empty, that's a measure that we've accomplished everything that we've inventoried as a need. What was useful for us as part of this was the budget meeting. So in this budget development that you're gonna get by the principals' budgets, the curriculum team leaders then bring forward, because they're in the same room as the principals when the conversations happen from teachers about what the needs are, whether it's text or it's curriculum programming or it's time. So you see in the principals' budgets, it reflects what the CTLs are saying, what the need is, which reflects what the teachers are sharing with their colleagues. So suddenly you have this through line, both directions, top down, bottom up, where everybody has the same goal. So the budget you're gonna see is reflective of that. It's just, it's everybody, there's not a surprise, there's not a loose cannon coming out saying, I wanna try this on for size. It's everybody has vetted this completely from top to bottom. So I'm
And
really comfortable with how it's been progressing.
I was just gonna say, like, when you're talking about budget, I think there was a tendency, especially with the teachers, to hoard materials and hoard money because, if you have a level funded budget or budget's gonna get cut, you don't know what's gonna get cut. And now, when, the principals and the CTLs are saying, look, we're gonna build this budget from the bottom up based on what everybody needs, suddenly there was just more camaraderie and people were more willing to say, I don't really need that, but I really could use this, or maybe I could get this cheaper version of this and spend more money here. And it just felt that the aura around it all just felt better. It just really did.
That's great.
I agree. I think that's a huge thing
Yeah.
with the
That's
budget.
it. So it's a magic bullet, I guess. We figured it out. But and we have a lot of work to do. But I could not do it without your expertise. And two greats. I did handpick some people who I thought would really who really internalized the concept well. Although we did not rehearse this in advance, so I didn't know it was coming out tonight. But thanks for
I got the email yesterday, so
throwing me-
I didn't have much time.
It's true. Our first day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you both for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Unless there's any other questions about that, it's the curriculum update. I think we're making great, solid progress.
The next item on our agenda is the report of the superintendent of schools, and this is specifically a Woodland Elementary School project update.
Yeah, just a very quick update. Wanted to have this as a standing item. I think we're getting to the point now. We want to keep the committee briefed on what's happening on January 7th. This is next Monday. We're headed to, myself, Aldo Chakey, Jonathan Bruce, who both, the chair and the vice chair, and we're leading the way in the owner's project manager search, along with our owner's project manager, Jocelyn Lesser Associates. We're all going to Boston on January 7th. That's the MSBA's panel review, where they finally give the stamp of approval. So that's happening next Monday afternoon. It is an open meeting. If you have interest in going to Boston and want to check that out, but I'll certainly report back to the committee, and we'll all be going into Boston to find out the next steps. And Jocelyn Lesser's been a reputable OPM. There's no expectation that there won't be a board approval next Monday.
And I think probably after we get that board approval, we should maybe speak with Jocelyn Lesser.
And have them come in and do a
come in and do
presentation.
a presentation for all members of the committee.
Yeah, I didn't want to have them come into the committee until they were sort of
Right.
anointed by.
Right.
So that's what that next Monday is you're going in with the project management for the Mass
MSBA.
Building Association to say, yep, that's a good choice.
Yeah, because
Here,
they're paying
meet
better
if
than
you
half the
are.
bill. They want to have a little
You
say
wanna
in it.
meet and- Okay, that's what it is. All
Yeah.
right. And then after that, you can really move forward. Okay.
Yes, there's the expression, he who pays the piper names the tunes. So, yeah, they want to be able to say, but by finding somebody. There you go. So, and then after that, if we have, as soon as they're available, we could be the next meeting in January or first meeting in February, at the committee's pleasure. We could have Jocelyn Lester come in and talk about what their work's gonna be.
Yeah, I think it would be good if we can find out from them next week when they're available, whether it be the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February.
Very good.
Jocelyn Lesser had a parent approach me at soccer, actually this evening, and who's a principal in another school district, but lives here in Milford, and said that she actually just finished working with them on a school project that they just built in another town, and that they couldn't say enough positive things about Jocelyn Lesser and just what a great job they've done. So we've got some good selections already, and looking forward to seeing the results of Monday's meeting and certainly having them
Well,
come in.
I think we also know that Aldo and Jonathan are not gonna let them get away with much. So
No.
No.
we're in a pretty good place.
All right, I guess I'm up again. I have.
Yeah, we do, actually. We now have the report of the assistant superintendent who's ill tonight. She's not with us. But I believe we do have a couple of warrants.
We do. So the first is, I guess enclosed in your packet, is the personnel list of latest appointments. For the school committee's information only, no vote is required. And on the warrant, there are two warrants tonight for school committee approval. The first warrant is in the amount of $25,443.77.
Motion from Rob, a second from Christine. All in favor of accepting the warrant. Opposed? Unanimous in favor, the motion carries.
The second warrant is in the amount of $134,463.62.
Motion from Scott, second from Paul. All in favor of approval of the warrant. Opposed? Unanimous in favor, the motion carries.
And I'll just circulate these through.
And no business update today, Bob?
Nothing that Kathy provided tonight.
Okay. I know that the next item on our agenda would normally be the subcommittee updates. I know that it feels like we just met yesterday, and so I know that there hasn't been any time really between the holiday and now. So I mean, unless there's a member of a committee that wants to share something, then we can move on to new business. Did any member bring new business?
Just one thing, I did receive a correspondence. Bob, I just mentioned this to you briefly earlier. It had just recently been brought to my attention. Question with regards to our social media policy as it relates to students. It was a request that I got from a faculty member, actually. Something that we certainly want to review. Just asking what the policy was, what was in place, and when was the last time that was reviewed. Bob, I know I'd asked you just briefly about this, if you can just kind of, for the
Sure.
benefit of the viewing public, and then obviously what the next steps are here.
Yeah, we have a woefully out-of-date acceptable use policy in the district. That's just,
I believe your specific words were it predates Facebook, which means that it's at least 5+ years old.
right, so,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. So it is long overdue. It's something that I began to work on with Rob Bonnell. It's something, work that I've continued now with Len, and we're at a point where we'll be bringing this to the policy subcommittee to review that and get it on the agenda. So I'll make that a priority, get our policy subcommittee together, and we'll review that. Social media policy, our acceptable use policy, is definitely in need of an adoption or of a revision. So it's on the radar now.
And I just have a question, and maybe it's just because now I'm in high school and I'm hearing it from other people, but they have exams coming up, and on 2 of these exams, they have half days. No lunch is served and no buses are provided at 11:30. So exams go to 11:30, and then there's no buses to take the kids home, am I right? And then there's no lunch. If you go on the school's website, that's what it says, and I find that a bit odd because
I have to-
can you just check into
Yeah,
that? Because one, your whole freshman class cannot drive. Your sophomore class, most of them cannot drive. And all the new driving laws, they can't drive their friends home. So there's lots of parents that have 2-parent working families. So I'm just curious, what happens to these students that, here's a student, there's no bus on, I think
Is this
there's no
different than
school
what's
on
happened
Friday.
before? Is this different than what's happened before, do you know? Is this a
I
change?
think it has. Someone mentioned to me last year, and maybe this is just how it's always been, but I find it a bit odd. So that on Wednesday and Thursday, there's exams in the morning, and they end at 11:30. But there's no bus provided, and there's no lunch. So kids who normally would take the bus don't go home on any bus. And then if there's no supervision. I'm just very confused. So I'd like.
The kids used to be able to leave. Excuse me, I'm fighting cold, but if they wanted to.
Mhm.
And then there was the thing where you'd have to get permission from your parents to leave. I know every year it's been different over the last few years, so.
But if you go on the high school if you on the website, as of, I think today, that's what it said. So I'd just like some
Okay,
clarity on what happens to 14, 15, 16,
Yeah, I'll-
17-year-olds on a
I'll
half day
I'll
when,
have to follow up with you on
you know,
that.
I just think it's, yeah, I just find it odd.
Yeah, it's nothing like when we were at school, all right? So it was, because I've
You have high
experienced this
schoolers.
with the high school, you know, the kids at the high school, at 11:30.
It's Wednesday,
It's,
Thursday.
oh, well, we're gonna get out at 11:30. Well, wait a minute, it's not really a half day, is it? Well, we have exams.
Yeah, only in the
And
morning.
then, so they used to just leave. If they had their parents' permission, they could leave the school. So they were always hounding me for permission, saying, hey, all my friends are leaving and all this stuff, which I found odd. I've never experienced anything like this, so.
Yeah,
So I don't even know what the rules are.
No,
'Cause
it-
it seemed like it changed every year.
It's on the, it's on the
First time it
website.
was like a free-for-all a few years ago.
I think
And
it
then
still
it was,
is.
you needed parents' permission.
No, as a student, isn't that true? And if my child can't get home on a bus,
He
and
doesn't
he's
want to
not
say
getting,
anything, his friends will get
he's
mad
not
at
getting
him.
lunch, there's no meal served, like, I find it crazy, just crazy. Now, I understand if there's study halls for the rest of the day, say on Wednesday, if the students are taking exams Thursday morning, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But I'm just please look at the website.
I will,
and check
I'll
into
look
that for
into
me.
it.
And I heard
Yeah,
it
and
from
if you
someone
could
last year as
email
well.
us tomorrow, what
Because it's-
is the process? Because I agree with you, Christine. It's
And-
different than anything we remember.
Well, you know,
obviously,
if you had someone you knew when we were younger, they could drive,
Right.
you know, you could be like, your neighbor could drive your kid home or something like that. But the driving laws are very different now, and, you know, I just,
I thought the buses still picked them up at the regular time.
it may be the regular time, but so then what happens to the students? No bus is provided at 11:30, so the students hang around the school from 11:30 to 2:30?
I'll have to find out, yeah, I
No
actually
classes?
don't know.
I'm just really.
Yeah,
quite
I'll look into it
And
and
it
I'll
may
get
be a
a.
simple misinterpretation, but if I'm misinterpreting it, I am sure there are many other parents also misinterpreting that information.
The only piece that, because I agree with you, if we're confused about it, we're on the committee and should know, hopefully have
Yeah.
some additional information. Certainly a lot of parents, so if we can get some clarity on that, number one, not just for the committee though, but
More
for the,
importantly,
for the
The schools,
4,000
yeah.
students and all
Just
the
to make it
parents that go
clear
along
on
with
the
that,
website,
and get
yeah.
some communication out to them. Whether it's, we use the alert now for this, hey, student, high school exams are on
Absolutely.
this date, this is what the busing and this is what transportation will be provided and will not be. Some students may be communicating with their parents and some students may not be as well.
Because
I
on
think.
Monday
So
and
let's make
Tuesday,
sure we get
there is
that
a
clarity.
class and exam schedule. So
Yeah.
you still have classes, but you have a block of exams on Monday and Tuesday. But Wednesday and Thursday are quite different in that they're just exams in the morning until 11:30.
When do we know what the exam schedule is gonna be? I know many years we've adjusted the half-day, the in-service day schedule, so they didn't fall on important dates like this. So it's not, I mean, are we necessarily tying these exam days to half-days for a purpose, or
Well, we've tied
is it
the,
more convenient for us to do?
we've
exam
tied,
days?
yeah, we've tied the January in-service day on the 18th
Right.
to the semester changeover, so it's not so much an exam day at that point, that the exams are over.
They have that
It's just
day
the-
off.
It's that, under the current structure of 2 semesters, they need that day to basically reset the deck for what
Yeah.
appears to be like
Right.
another school year. That will, they'll change down the road with a new schedule, going forward. So I think that's the January explanation. The other days don't coincide, to my knowledge, with exams that we have the other half days, so they're separate. I'm just curious to know if this has been an ongoing, or if it's something that's a new practice, or what happens, but I'll find out, and I'll get
Yeah.
back to the committee tomorrow.
Yeah, and even if the buses come at 2:30, I'm
Yeah,
still
then we'll get
confused
some
what happens for
communication out
those
to
3
them.
hours.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've never gotten a comment from a parent about it.
I did last year a couple times, you know, and it just was particularly working parents where they were like, what am I supposed to do with my freshmen, you know?
Right.
Or they had to leave work to come home and get them and bring them back to home. But I'm just curious now that
Yeah, I'll
I
find
have
out
someone
for
in the
you.
same situation.
Okay, sorry, I don't know, but I'll get an
Yeah,
answer.
just curious.
Yeah, the next item on our agenda is old business. I wanted to just throw in something here. I noticed, if you have noticed, each member of the committee is now wearing an ID badge. And I've been through some of our school buildings, and our teachers now are all, without fail, wearing ID badges. And so, this is something, I just want to reassure the community that, we're now 2.5 weeks removed from the events that happened in Connecticut, and we haven't let down our guard. We haven't forgotten about the things we've discussed or the protocols that we're going to move forward on. This is just a small piece, but improving security is a step of many small pieces, so I wanted to reassure the community of that. So, does any member have old business?
Along those same lines, Bob, wanted to see if you'd had an opportunity to connect with the alarm company and find out. Okay, good. Get some updates here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll give some updates on the safety and security piece. And I'm glad you made that point, because you're right. What can happen with a holiday break is people somehow, it wasn't an event that happened that now that's happened and we move on. It's no different than what September 11th, did to change airport security. This forever changed how schools think and behave. And sadly, it's become a business opportunity for a lot of vendors to now look at ways that we can come assess the safety and security of your school. We have a great police department that we work in very solid partnership with. I spent an hour and a half or so with Tom O'Laughlin today, Officer Pasicane, and a representative from Motorola, and we're talking about some ways, because we've only had, this is only our third day of school since the last time the committee has met, but in that time, Tom and I have been talking throughout the vacation week and what steps to take. So there's two pieces. One was the follow-up to the, and I really want to be careful. I'm going to be careful what I say going forward, because I don't want to start to give away the security measures in a public forum for the very reason that there's safety and security measures for our district. It is protected under executive session, the rights of the school committee, and I will be happy to share that in a separate venue. But the things that should be known to the public is that we have not just, said, well, that event happened, we locked our doors, we added police for a week or so, and we're all done. That's not the case. The police presence is still there. It's a step-down presence, but the officers and detectives and patrol cars are still throughout the district. What I'm really pleased to report is Tom and I have been working with, or in the process of working with the Metro SWAT team to do some training for staff, as I mentioned at the last meeting, and how that training will materialize really is around a revision to our lockdown procedure. I won't get into those details here, but how we're going to do that, how we're going to train our staff to be, because as much as the conversation is about putting armed guards at the front door, great, but until that person's no longer there, and then what have we done? We've not, just like the curriculum team leaders, we've empowered our staff to be able to think on their feet and to outside of their comfort zone, to improvise, and we've not trained our staff to do that, and we need to do that. And that's part of this package, which I'll share in a separate venue with the committee. But I am pleased to report, and it should be known to the public, the Milford Police Department, through a grant along with the fire department, has upgraded all their radios. This is a police issue radio. And talking to Tom today, we're looking about getting about 20 of these. There's no cost to the district. And these are, obviously high-end police-grade radios. And it goes back to the point where, this whole, the remote, the panic buttons, and still having those installed in the offices, but thinking about, well, here's an interesting idea. Instead of the panic button going to an alarm company, these radios have this little orange button on top, which is a direct call to dispatch, to 911. So now if a teacher's on duty, they have this radio, and they're in the back play yard, because it may not be always as in school, and if the panic buttons could be cumbersome, they could be problematic. But the point that you had brought forward, Scott, was that we need to have some remote way of getting to 911 if they don't have a cell phone on them, or if they're not able to talk. This allows us to do that. The staff member hits the orange button, no questions asked. Cruisers are moving, period. The advantage also with this radio and this frequency is that when they push this button down, they get Milford Dispatch 911. They can talk to them. So if they have the ability to talk and explain, we're at this location. And there's things that Tom and I have talked about specifically about how we deal with lockdowns, how we deal with evacuations, that it will really tighten up our work and put us ahead of many other school districts. I haven't had a chance to share this with the Safety Security Committee because it just happened today, these conversations. We'll also, through Motorola programming, the expense to the school district, which will be minimal, will be to program these radios. It'll allow us to do a couple of things. One is on one channel, it'll allow us direct access to 911, to Milford Police. We don't want to have that as a network of these 20 radios. People are now carrying on conversations in Milford, and the police, it's over the police radios. So we'll have another frequency that's a local area frequency. So now a school, for example, if you're at Memorial School and you're evacuating to Stacy School, which is a known evacuation location if we had say a gas leak at the school or whatever it may be, unless we picked up the phone and called Stacy and said, hey, by the way, there's 600 of us coming over to your school, open the doors. Now they can all be in the same loop and say, we're moving, this is what's happening. This becomes our crisis communication radio district-wide. So in the short time, in a matter of 3 business days, really, that we've been back in school, we've already put a plan in place that we'll have in effect virtually immediately. So that 911 suggestion that you had brought forward that day we met on that Sunday has translated into now number of teachers being empowered with this 911 access. There's a training, there's a learning curve that still has to happen, but I'm very comfortable that our staff will be on board with that, and I'm very happy to report that the police department continues to be a great partner with us. And it's just a quick update as to what we're doing with some quick solutions on that. So it's not been forgotten. We are still very much moving forward. So it's been a busy couple of days, actually. Absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
Does any other member have full business? We will have a brief executive session this evening. It's for the purpose of discussing a matter of collective bargaining, the discussion of which in open session could compromise the committee's position. We will need a roll call. By acknowledging, by saying yes, to please enter executive session from each member. And yes, so we will now enter executive session. We will not be returning. Thank you.